Hey guys, and welcome back. I am Rachel O'Leary and I am out in the greenhouse today because it's Thursday and we leave tomorrow to go up to Toronto for me to do a book signing and to speak for the Peel Regional Aquarium Club. So I'm trying to prep everything. One of the things that I need to do out here in the greenhouse is top off all these tubs. Because it gets so profoundly hot in here during the day, there's quite a bit of an evaporation issue. So I'm just going to go top them all off, and they should be fine for the duration of the trip. Now I thought while I was doing that I'd talk to you about how I'm also going to prep the fish room. So let's get started. One of the things, or one of the major things that I do when we're getting ready to travel is I hire a pet sitter, and that's for a few reasons. One, we don't have any local family really. We have a lot of different pets, and it just gives me peace of mind, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's usually about $20 a day or so to have someone come out and take care of all the animals. This means the cats get fed, the chickens get looked after, the fish room gets tended, etc. Now, I don't typically have the fish fed, and that's because overfeeding is way more dangerous than them going without food. There are a few exceptions down in the fish room, one of which is my Ancistrus fry and my Shelly fry. So I'll put tags on those tanks, pre-portion the food in little Ziplocs labeled with the tank number, and have her feed those. Now, if you only have a couple of tanks, you could also use something like those day of the week medication containers. They work really well. But my preference is to just use Ziplocs, and then I put numbers on the tanks, put numbers on the bags and what day, and I generally have them fed half as often as I would like, so about every other day for the fry. All in all, that seems to work out really well. Now, some people like to use vacation feeders. I don't, because I've had them fail. My fish room's kind of humid, and when it gets too humid, if you're using things like flake food or freeze-dried food, they can bind together, and then the entire automatic feeder can dump or just malfunction. So for the most part, most fish can go easily without food for up to about 2 weeks. Since we're only going to be gone for just under a week, I don't need to worry about having my fish fed. Now, there are a couple things I wanted to show you out here in the greenhouse, one of which is back there. So let me grab the camera and hobble over there and we'll take a quick look. Now, in many countries and areas, apple snails of all types are banned completely. You can see out here how the apple snails, which are mystery snails, which are legal here, are laying their eggs up on the reeds in this bin, and that's how they do it in the wild. They'll climb up out of the water and lay their eggs on any vertical surface that they can find. Because of this, it's very, very easy for them to become invasive very quickly, and that's led to them being restricted in a lot of tropical areas, and most species being restricted entirely. Each of those little egg sacs can have several hundred baby snails. So it's really important, if you're working with them outside, that you have them in an area where you can contain it. You wouldn't want these getting out into the wild, into local waterways. Since I live nowhere near any other water, I feel pretty good about raising my mystery snails out here in my greenhouse. Now, for the most part, it's this top row that really has a lot of evaporation, and I'm actually considering getting some shade cloth for the greenhouse to cut down on this. These tubs get up to the low 80s in temperature. What really helps me is that overnight things dip down into the 50s or lower, and that cools it down, so the average temperature in these tubs stays in the mid to high 70s. Perfectly appropriate for most fish and shrimp. All the plants are doing super awesome, and I see baby shrimp everywhere, and I'm starting to see, as I showed you last week, fry in the bins as well. Now, a few of you have been curious about my carnivorous plant tray that I started, and it takes about 70 days for these to sprout. I don't remember exactly when I did it. I'd have to look back. And I've been keeping this covered with a plastic tray and keeping it very, very wet. And as you can see, if we look closely, there's some little sprouts showing up around in the various trays. So I'm pretty hopeful that we'll get at least some seedlings from this packet of seeds that I used. Now, I also took the opportunity while I was doing this to go around to the various pots And just add a root tab. I do this every, 3 to 5 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks out here in order to encourage flowering with all these marginal plants, but most especially my lilies. And it doesn't really matter what kind of root tab you use, just providing that adequate nutrition ensures that they're going to bloom for us all season long. I would expect when I get back from vacation next week that a lot of these will be starting to throw up flowers as it's finally getting mild around here. The new flowers that I put in out here are going like gangbusters. I'm super stoked. Now, I'll probably water the bog garden before I leave, but it's been so profoundly rainy here that I'm not really stressing otherwise about their care. I do have my pet sitter checking the bog garden to make sure it's not dry, as well as making sure this tray here of my other carnivorous plants stays full of water. Now I'm just going to take a quick minute to fertilize these lilies as well. And again, all you do is push the root tab well below the surface on the edge of the pot. This way it feeds the plant without releasing all the nutrients into the water column and ensures that we get a lot of blooms. And sometimes I'll just use my finger to poke a hole into the substrate and then close the substrate back over top of it when I am done putting in the root tab. I'll take this opportunity as well to pull out some of this hair algae, which I throw into the yard because the chickens will eat it. Oh, there's a flower stalk on this pot here. That's exciting. Of course, I'll probably miss it because I'll be out of town. This spring has been ridiculously cool as to what's normal here. It's been in the 60s almost constantly. So it's taken my lilies a bit longer than typical to send up flowers, but I really can't wait for this year's blooming season because I have a lot of really neat varieties to share with you guys. And if you follow me on Instagram, I post almost constant updates there of all the various flowers from both the greenhouse, my bins, and my gardens over there. So make sure you check that out. It's at Ms. Jenks. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. As always, thank you guys for the continued support. And let me know below if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, and what you do for your vacation time. Right there is that flower stem I was talking about. It'll send that flower right up to the surface and it should bloom beautifully. I did have one of the lilies in the greenhouse bloom already, but nothing out here, so this makes me super excited. And it's perfect timing for me to fertilize so it continues to throw flowers. Now, one other thing that I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about what I do for vacation is I make sure that all of my aquarium's lights are on a timer. And down in the fish room, I have one big central timer which keeps all of the lights on a set schedule. It's really easy or pretty common to have lights stay on all the time when we're away, and that can lead to some really significant algae blooms. So every tank in my care, except for Sid Fishes here, has a timer, and I've directed my pet sitter to turn this light on or off, but the reality is I'd much rather have it off for the week that I'm gone than to have it on and risk getting a really massive algae bloom. As you can see, we have a little bit of algae here that I'm going to try and get to today. Otherwise, for all my fish, all I do is make sure that I've been feeding normally, and usually a day or two before we're about to travel, I do my normal water change, and then they all do fine. I rarely to never lose any fish at all. And I come home and the fish are super happy to see me, super fun to feed, and everything's in good shape. Now, you're going to find a lot of different opinions on what's important when you're traveling, but I can tell you through my 20 years of experience that not having the fish fed has always worked out really, really well for me. One thing I do like to do, though, is to make sure that I've gone over with my pet sitter what to do if there's a power outage. We have a generator that we use, and she's been directed on how to work that. The other thing that I like to do is make sure on aquariums that have things that rely on filtration other than my central loop with my sponge filters, that I have some redundancy there, that I have extra filters, and I've shown my pet sitter where they are. Most specifically for the central pump that is the lifeblood of my fish room. I always keep a spare one of those around so that if it fails, she can easily just unplug the last one and plug in a new one to make sure that there's no catastrophe in the fish room. Let me know down below again what you guys do when you're going on vacation.